Hey everyone, welcome to week 7 and 8 of our European Super League simulation. So anyone just joining the channel now, the way we do the simulation is we watch every team in the top domestic leagues in Europe from week to week, and we basically derive a score of how well they would be doing if they were in a European Super League. So just a quick rundown as a reminder of how this works. We took the top 20 teams based on UEFA coefficients from the 1920 season. Top 5 at the end of the season will get some sort of bonus prize money, some incentive to come in the top of the table. Bottom 5 are relegated to Super League B, which I'll show you in a minute. The basic idea of this simulation is the tougher the opponent that you face, the more points a win is worth. Usually in a domestic league, win is going to be 3 points. In this Super League, those points are going to be weighted by the difficulty of your opponent. So let's take you over to the current standings. So in Super League A, let's just go down the list. In first, we have PSG, same as last week. Again, they're a few games ahead of most of the other leagues. And one thing I'm doing differently just this week is a new column in the spreadsheet that is points per game. I've said a lot of the videos I've done, I mention that some teams have played more games, so they're going to be at the top of the table until the end of the season when things even out. So just to get an idea of how well those teams are really doing, I threw in the points per game, which just shows us, for example, PSG has played 10 points and played 10 games, and from those 10 games, they've earned 13.59 points in the Super League. So that puts their average at about 1.36 points per game. And by this color coding, you can compare to some of the other teams in the table, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, and rounding out the top 5, Tottenham and Atletico Madrid. You can see, even though these teams are behind at the moment, they have a much better points per game average. And you could imagine that once they catch up to having played 10 games, they'll probably overtake PSG. But let's keep going down the table. So PSG, another win, keeping them at the top of the table for now. Liverpool's in second. They had their match against Manchester City, one of the big Premier League matches of the year. And it was a draw, 1-1. One of the biggest headlines being Kevin De Bruyne missing a penalty that would have given the win to Manchester City, but allowing instead both to take away points. And because Liverpool and Manchester City have such good SPIs, Manchester City has a 92.97. That's a pretty good takeaway from a draw for Liverpool to go away with 0.93. And let's just jump down to Manchester City, and they went away with 0.89. So that's a pretty good score as far as a draw is concerned. Bayern Munich, third place. They also had a big classic match against Borussia Dortmund. They were able to pull off the win, 3-2, which of course is going to give them a pretty good score, 2.62. That's a great weighted score for a win. Again, 3 would be an opponent with a perfect SPI. 2.62 is pretty good. So that bumped up Bayern Munich 2 places into third place in the table. Fourth place, Tottenham. Tottenham's been on a great streak. I think they've won definitely the last couple of their games, if I'm not mistaken. They won against West Brom, which will give them a 1.77. Atletico Madrid rounds out the top 5. And remember, the top 5 in the simulation, there'd be some sort of incentive to come in the top 5, a bigger share of the prize money. But Atletico Madrid had a big win over Cadiz, 4-0, giving them 2 points. So that's our top 5. Again, you can kind of see the points per game, and you'll see as we go down the table, points per game definitely gets worse, and that kind of makes sense. But it gives you a picture of how it might end up at the end of the season. So right outside the top 5, Real Madrid. So Real Madrid had a pretty crazy loss to Valencia, giving away 3 penalties. and losing points for that match week. Then we've got Chelsea with a win over Sheffield United. Lyon, again, being from the French league, they played 10 games. You can see their points per game doesn't really belong in the tier they are. They're more of this orange color, which probably is more down here once things even out. So once the other teams have played 10 games or they're even, you'll see those even out. But they got a win this week. Borussia Dortmund, we mentioned, played against Bayern Munich and lost by 1 goal. Roma won against Genoa, giving them a 1.66 boost to their Super League score. And we've got Napoli, Manchester City, we talked about, with a draw against Liverpool. Arsenal had an interesting game, losing to Aston Villa 0-3. Aston Villa has put in some pretty good performances this season. And we'll talk about them later in Super League B. But definitely a loss for Arsenal to lose those points, but a great boost to Aston Villa's campaign. Juventus with a draw against Lazio. And just before the relegation zone, we have Ajax with a win against FC Utrecht. So let's go through the relegation zone. So still down in the relegation zone is Barcelona. Barcelona did have a good week. They got a win against Real Betis, with Messi showing some of his world class and giving them 2.19 as they work their way out of the relegation zone. And they've only played 7 games. Other teams here have played 8 or even 10. So I'm assuming we'll see them come out of the relegation zone before the end. Again, another big name in the relegation zone is still Manchester United. They also had a good week. They were able to bounce back from some losses with a win against Everton. Everton, who's also been doing pretty well this season. So it was great to get a decisive win there and get 2.26 points from that. Rounding out the bottom 3, Sevilla with a win against Osasuna, Benfica, and FC Porto. So that's Super League A. And again, these are the bottom 5 that, if it were to continue this way through the rest of the season, they would get relegated to Super League B. And on that note, let's go take a look at Super League B. Okay, so in first place, once again, we've got Zenit St. Petersburg. Again, big gap here in games played. Looking at the points per game is going to be important. You can see they have about a 1 for their points per game, so they're averaging about 1 point from each one of their games. If you were to put this kind of with other like colors, they'd probably be down here near the bottom, close to the bottom of the table. So I think as the season goes on, we'll see some of these other teams take over or overtake Zenit St. Petersburg. But they did get a win, and that puts them in first place. And next is Real Sociedad with a win against Granada. They stay in second place. Leicester City with a win against Wolves bumps them up to third place. Villarreal bumps up 3 places into the promotion zone with a win against Getafe. And then Aston Villa, we've mentioned, got a big win over Arsenal. So as far as big winners of the week, probably Aston Villa, because if you look at all these different weighted points that teams took away from this week, plenty of teams lost. There were some ties. Aston Villa was the biggest winner by beating Arsenal. They got 2.43 points onto their European Super League tally, and that was enough to get them into the top 5, or I should say keep them in the top 5. They were at 5th place in week 6 after week 6. But that's a great accomplishment for them. So that rounds up the top 5, which, of course, if this continued until the end of the season with these same standings, these would be the top 5 that would go into Super League A next season. And then in the middle of the table, we've got Southampton, AC Milan, RB Leipzig, Bayer Leverkusen, Everton, Wolverhampton, West Ham United, Getafe, Atalanta, and Real Betis. And feel free to take a look at that at the table. I'll just point out some things Real Betis has played 9 games, so they're a little bit ahead in the number of games played. Their points per game average is pretty low, so I could see them getting overtaken as well. And then down to the relegation zone, we've got FC Salzburg, Borussia Mönchengladbach, Internazionale, Eintracht Frankfurt, and TSG Hoffenheim, which, if the standings were to continue, these 5 would be relegated to Super League C. Some of the big names, being Inter, that I expect that they will move up out of the relegation zone before the end, but it's always interesting to see some of these bigger names being overtaken by some teams that don't have as much history or reputation as Inter. So that is it for this week. Watch for next week's video, and we'll retally the Super League simulation. Again, links to this spreadsheet, links to previous videos. If you want a little more context on this experiment we're doing, you can find the links to each week in the description. And thanks for watching.